Welcome to the American Roundtable. I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickler.
So much happening in the world, of course. Now in Istanbul, another act of terror claims lives. Of course, we have that and more on Trump, outgoing President Obama, and the reason why it may not be a good idea to eat chicken.
Especially for lunch, Al.
That's right. But we'll talk more about that. This is the American Roundtable. Politics is unusual. Keeping it real, keeping it tough here every week on Tuff TV and Tuff TV 38. We have a lot in store and a lot to cover, so we'll get with it shortly. But first off, Bill, I want to wish you a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Al.
A lot coming up in 2017 that we want to bring to you. If it's half the year 2016 was, well, then there's going to be a lot to talk about. Luckily, you have American Roundtable here to talk about it. We'll see you right back here on Tuff TV's American Roundtable, across the nation and around the universe.
Welcome back to American Roundtable. Recently we had another terrorist attack, and this time it happened in Istanbul, Turkey. So tell us a little bit about it, Al.
A horrendous attack, not unlike the attack in Orlando, Florida, where we produced this show. At least 39 people have been killed. And it's very interesting to see that even putting a police officer in front of the club and having other counter-terrorism, counter-crime measures does nothing for someone who is hell-bent on shooting as many people as possible, because we're seeing it here. We're seeing a man who shot the cop outside in Istanbul, Turkey, walked right in and started shooting people, just like in Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Another similarity, he was recruited by ISIS, just like Omar Mateen in Orlando. And, of course, he is of the Muslim faith. Not saying that everyone of the Muslim faith is going to do this, but there is that similarity. So this was at the Reina nightclub, injuring 70 others. So he shot about 100 people. Shot at least one American. The American William Rack, a businessman from Delaware, was injured. He was visiting Istanbul with friends for his birthday, and he was shot in the leg. He's 35 years old. He's probably the luckiest person in the whole thing, as he calls himself, because he played dead. And, of course, if you ever find yourself in that situation, which is highly likely now that Pulse nightclub is the scene of the deadliest shooting in American history, I think that that's something that you need to do. If you ever find yourself shot and you're not immediately killed, you need to play dead. Your thoughts?
I think the great minds of America, especially the engineers that put a man on the moon in 1969, that we should, it was 69, wasn't it?
It was, July 69.
That we should come up presently in commercial buildings, you have to have a sprinkler system. So why not a terrorist system that goes into operation if terrorists are in the nightclub or a restaurant, and then it just activates, and our minds can, people that are watching, they can do something about it.
I don't know. We have to come up with some ideas because, like you said, I think we're in the middle of World War III. We just haven't called it that yet. But what else is it? Since 9/11, we keep seeing these attacks. They're escalating. War in the Middle East doesn't seem to be getting any better. We have a permanent state of war now. I'm not seeing anything that gives me much hope, but we'll keep an eye on this. Our hearts and our thoughts go out to the families and the people killed at the nightclub in Turkey. More in a moment.
This morning, the Pentagon is responding to North Korea's claim that the country is close to testing an intercontinental ballistic missile. Let's bring in right now a man who requested before to speak about the Mariah Carey performance on New Year's Eve. NBC News Pentagon correspondent Hans Nichols. Hans, we're going to ask you, you can talk about Mariah if you want to, but first, could you tell us what the Pentagon's saying about North Korea's latest threat?
Well, this is pretty standard from the Pentagon, right? And I've got to be honest, there have been so many missile tests or talks of missile tests from North Korea. When this statement came out, I actually missed it. It's not that big of a deal that the Pentagon is putting out a statement declaring, talking about provocative actions. The big question you get in the intelligence community in the Pentagon on North Korea and nuclear missiles is, one, have they miniaturized a weapon? And about 2-3 weeks ago, a senior official told me that the assessment is they have miniaturized a weapon to put on an ICBM. And the other challenge is, have they figured out re-entry on that missile? Those are the big questions at the Pentagon in terms of does North Korea have this capability? One thing I'd note, senior intelligence official, senior military official told me a couple weeks ago, Special Forces has contingency planning for North Korea for this very purpose. Now,
So Hans, let's strip it down really quickly from what you just said, just for people that haven't followed this story too closely.
Yeah.
What that means is, if they have that capability, that means in the next few years they could possibly hit Seattle, Portland, San Francisco with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that's why when you ask anyone at the Pentagon what keeps you up at night, it's not Syria, it's not China. To a person, they always respond, North Korea. The second one would they'd say India, Pakistan. That also keeps them up. But this is really one of their key concerns there. You know, a little bit on Russia, just what's happening now. Some special forces have been moved into the Baltics. Commandos are there. And the Pentagon's being very public about this because they want the very fact of them being there to be a deterrent.
Okay.
Guys?
So I think, guys, don't you think Hans did his job adequately?
Here's another story that should keep you alert because we want to make sure that you are aware of things that are happening not just in the United States, not just in the Middle East, but also in Asia as well. North Korea, of course, has been talking about developing an intercontinental ballistic missile for quite some time, at least the past 5 to 10 years. It looks like they are closer than ever to doing so. Now, North Korea specifically, is a buffer state which is kept in power by China because they don't want South Korea invading China, which obviously is a possibility because the North Korea and South Korea are still technically at a state of war. Did you know that, Bill?
Sure did.
And so now it's almost ready to fire its first intercontinental ballistic missile. What are your thoughts?
Well, how long is it going to take to get from North Korea to Seattle? You know, the dictator there is...
You're talking about for a missile?
Yeah.
A matter of minutes.
So, and this is, you know, going to be an irritation, and here Trump comes in the office, and this is something else that awaits him. And is it a failed foreign policy that's been in place that he's at this position now? I mean, you know, that's everybody's opinion.
Well, you know, all I can say, Bill, is regardless of who's in power in the United States, we have to deal with North Korea. I mean, it's just one of those things. North Korea, like I said, is being propped up by China. So North Korea is going to continue to be a thorn and a little bit of a stone in the shoe of the United States because we can't very well attack North Korea at this point because it would be like attacking China again, like we did in 1950. Not a very good idea. We didn't do well back then. We certainly wouldn't do well now. Plus, we're good friends with China. Most of our stuff comes from there, including the phone that I'm using today. So it probably is something that we just have to deal with. I think it would be absolute lunacy for the North Koreans to actually fire a missile at the United States. Just don't think it's going to happen. If it does, we will be obliterating the entire Asian peninsula, I would think. I mean, you wouldn't really stop with North Korea at that point. It would, because then China would have to retaliate, and it could lead to all kinds of problems. So I think it's more bluster. What do you think?
Well, the guy's going to keep talking, and he's developing his technology to actually do something. So definitely we have to pay attention to him and maybe make sure that we have intelligence on what he's doing and get ready for the eventual button pushing.
Well, I hope we don't get to the button pushing, because you know what? I like my house. It's a nice house, and I want to keep it. We'll have more in a moment on American Roundtable on Tuff TV and Tuff TV 38.
Welcome back to American Roundtable. Now let's talk about the use of Twitter by President Obama and Donald Trump. So how do you see this whole thing playing out? How are they doing that now?
Well, I think Twitter has become relevant, really very relevant now, which is something that it wasn't for a little while. 140 characters Basically, they're little mini blogs, in case you're not familiar with Twitter, and you can blog anything you want in 140 characters or less. A character, of course, is a letter or a symbol or anything like that. It was used masterfully during the 2016 campaign by Donald Trump, and now it's being used by President Obama. Of course, he's not, according to this article, he's not the most prolific Twitter user out there, but he's making some use of the @POTUS handle, which stands for President of the United States, while he still can. A series of 7 tweets, Obama defended his legacy and the remarkable progress made during his presidency in areas including job growth and access to affordable health care. According to CNN, quote, "From realizing marriage equality to removing barriers to opportunity, we've made history in our work to reaffirm that all are created equal." He tweeted, "It's been a privilege of my life to serve as your president. I look forward to standing with you as a citizen. Happy New Year, everybody." There have been 340 tweets from Obama since he got his own account in May of 2015, not that long ago, while Donald Trump has posted 34,202 tweets since joining Twitter in 2009. What do you think about that difference, Bill?
Well, Donald Trump is definitely keeping up with the new technology, and that's another avenue for him to get his message out. But we're in this time frame to where people can put out anything they want on Twitter, and who's to say it's the truth, and who's to say it isn't? So, it's not like you have a very objective news reporter like us that'll put things out that have been investigated and primarily would be the truth. So just because somebody says they've created all those jobs, did they actually do it?
Well, sure, that's up for debate. But here's something that's very interesting. Sean Spicer, who is the incoming White House press secretary under Trump, said that Trump will continue to use Twitter to announce policy and comment on current events after he becomes president. Quote, "You know what? The fact of the matter is that when he tweets, he gets results," said Spicer. He described Trump's use of Twitter as a way to bypass the mainstream media. On New Year's Eve, of course, he taunted his enemies on Twitter, saying that, we beat you, but we want to wish you a happy New Year anyway. And here's another story that's related. Anthony Bourdain. He is of course saying we should blame smug liberals for the Trump election. It's time liberals stop looking down on conservatives, according to the famous chef. He says that, quote, "The utter contempt with which privileged Eastern liberals such as myself discuss red state, gun country, working class America as ridiculous and morons and rubes is largely responsible for the upswell of rage and contempt and desire to pull down the temple that we're seeing now." It's a new interview he did with Reason. Your thoughts?
Well, didn't it kind of like happen with the French Revolution, where you had the classes, a larger separation, and then the lower class, or not the elitists, let's not say the lower class, but let's say you have the elitists.
Well, you
and
had the
non-elitists.
bourgeoisie, you had the proletariat, the working class, and then, of course, you had the elites in France, and everybody got angry. We had a big division, which I don't believe we're going to have a revolution here in America. We already had one, but we have republic institutions to prevent the need for a revolution. I guess you could say the election of Donald Trump was a revolution, a legal one,
right,
within the bounds of the Constitution. I think people, like the people that Anthony Bourdain are talking about, are fighting back. He said he's met a hell of a lot of nice people in gun country, God-fearing America. Found that they're on the same path as everyone else, doing the best they can to get by, take care of themselves and the people they love. So when we brand their views as illegitimate, when we mock them at every turn and treat them with contempt, we do no one any good. We'll have more, of course, on this as time goes by, and we'll have other stories as well. It's Tuff TV's American Roundtable. We'll see you in a moment.
This is the American Roundtable. So lately, Oliver Stone has been in the news, and for a voice that doesn't is not part of the party ranks in Hollywood, it's kind of strange that he would be saying things. Like, he doesn't necessarily believe that the Russians were behind the hacking. He doesn't believe that. and he's totally against the mainstream media because it's dangerous when everybody jumps on the same bandwagon.
Well, you know, here's the thing about the mainstream media. Mainstream media, when people refer to the mainstream media, they're talking about, of course, the media that everybody sees, which is basically owned by about 5 companies. 5 companies, 5 large media conglomerates own pretty much everything we see and hear. We're an independent media source on Tuff TV, so you'll hear sometimes the same story, sometimes the same story done from a different perspective, but we try to bring you the truth like you intimated earlier, Bill. Part of that, the danger is that this can morph into not news but propaganda. Basically, we have to be careful about where we're getting our news and make sure we fact check, not just accept everything as face value. I really think that it's important, and of course Oliver quotes here, when one groupthink, which is of course from 1984, right, groupthink, when one groupthink controls our national conversation, it becomes truly dangerous. Stone takes issue with the New York Times reporting of the Russian hacking claims and its stagnant Cold War vision of a 1950s world where Russians are to blame for most everything. Hillary's lost, most of the aggression and disorder in the world, the desire to destabilize Europe, etc. I think it's silly to go after the Russians without enough proof that this is the case. And I think this is also being done to hide other stories as well that want to be swept under the carpet. So I believe that Stone has a point. And Stone taking the side of Russia and Donald Trump is kind of interesting because he's known as a very liberal director. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he even said, I never thought I'd find myself praying for the level-headedness of a Donald Trump. And, you know, he's all against people just jumping on a bandwagon of fake news and mainstream media propaganda.
Well, sure, because it leads to the hysteria. You remember the Red Scare of the 1950s. That was, of course, brought out by the media. The media kept decrying that evil Russia and so forth, and people followed suit. I think the media has a responsibility to report the truth, and that's what it's for. And the less media outlets we have, the more propagandistic I think the message is. But we will endeavor to keep bringing you the truth here on American Roundtable. Some final thoughts in a moment. Welcome back to the American Roundtable on Tuff TV and Tuff TV 38. Well, we will have the story about the chicken next week. We want to go a little more in depth, but seeing as time is of the essence, you went to see Rogue One recently, which is a Star Wars movie, and you've been inspired to bring us some Yoda quotes, Bill.
Sure, and unfortunately Carrie Fisher died, so this is the time of the Force.
Yes, she played Princess Leia, if you recall. Yeah,
so some of the sayings that, and Yoda was a pretty wise guy, and
well, you're a wise guy.
I'm not Italian now. Okay, but you know, there's some things that Yoda would say, and he was a pretty, you know, really wise person, I guess you can say. And one of them that I liked was, when you look at the dark side, careful you must be, for the dark side looks back.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Also, I like this one. Many of the truths that we cling to depend on our point of view. Of course, Yoda didn't say that. Obi-Wan said that, but it's still a good quote.
Do or do not, there is no try.
May the Force be with you. Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. Consume you it will. You must unlearn what you have learned. I like that one. What else do you have?
Difficult to see, always in motion is the future.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Always two there are, no more, no less, a master and an apprentice.
Always pass on what you have learned.
This is one of my favorites, and this is very difficult. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
Patience you must have.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
That's certainly true, isn't it, Al? Hate is a poison, I always told my kids. And it just, if you hate, then it just flows through your body, and you become a very bitter person.
Don't hate. Don't hate. Don't be a hater. Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. Mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not. Attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed, that is. Jealousy is the shadow of greed.
And O great warrior, war does not make one great.
If you end your training now, if you choose the quick and easy path, you will become an agent of evil. See, so don't rush. Don't rush. Take your time. We advise you to have a beautiful week. We'll see you next Saturday. Until then, I'm Al Spry.
I'm Bill Strickler.
And this is the American Roundtable on Tuff TV and Tuff TV 38. Keep it real. Keep it tough.